The night in Lomara City breathed like an instrument left half-played. Rain hadn't fallen yet, but its scent hung in the air, damp, electric, waiting. The neon signs flickered between life and exhaustion, their blue and pink lights melting across the cracked streets like spilled dreams. At the far end of an alley stood a small jazz café. Its signboard half broken, its windows fogged by memory. Inside, time didn't move forward. It just swayed, softly, to the rhythm of something half forgotten. The room smelled of smoke and stories. Chairs creaked like old songs. A trumpet slept on its side. And in the low hum of voices, a silence waited to be born. That's when Nalás walked in. Her coat was long, brushing against her knees. Beads glimmered on her collar, and her skin glowed like copper under dim yellow light. She wasn't looking at anyone. She never did. The moment she entered, every whisper stopped. The pianist's fingers hovered above the keys. Even the smoke seemed to pause, curling around her like curiosity. She walked to the mic, calm, slow, deliberate. The sound of her heels was softer than rain. No one clapped. No one dared. Everyone waited. In the corner, Yari lifted his head. He had been sitting there since sunset. Charcoal in one hand, sketchbook in the other. Eyes tired, heart heavier than the rain outside. He had drawn her before. Once. Years ago. When her laughter filled spaces louder than her songs ever could. Now she stood there again. Same curls, same silence. But something in her face had changed. It wasn't sadness. It was history. Nalás didn't speak. She closed her eyes, tilted her head slightly, and exhaled a note, low, trembling, like the world's first secret. The café froze. Her voice was language itself. Not of words, but of wounds. Each tone carried a story. Of leaving, of losing. Of something that never found its way home. Yari's charcoal moved fast, almost desperate. He wasn't drawing her anymore. He was drawing a memory. The night she said, "One day, I'll leave, Yari. I'll chase the sound the city forgot." And she did. Now, here she was again. Singing not for love, but for closure. Outside, thunder murmured softly, as if it too was listening. Her song floated through the café, sliding over glasses, faces, and the dusty floorboards. Every soul there carried a secret. And for a moment, it felt like she was singing each one out loud. Yari stopped drawing. His fingers trembled. The sketch smudged, turning her face into a blur of smoke and regret. He whispered, "Do you remember? but the sound drowned in her voice. He wanted to stand, to tell her how much the silence had hurt, how long he had waited. But her eyes were closed, and her song didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to the night, to the city, to every broken promise left in its alleys. The wind shifted. Raindrops pressed against the windows, but didn't fall yet, as if waiting for her final note. Nala's voice grew stronger, the music climbing, trembling, reaching for something beyond the walls. Every cracked mirror caught her reflection. A dozen Nalas, all singing the same truth. That love, once gone, never truly leaves. Yari looked up. Her image flickered in the glass. Each reflection was a version of her he had failed to keep. He reached for the sketch again, his final line tracing her eyes. And then, the first drop fell. A single tear from the sky. On the glass. On her cheek. Her voice faded into silence. No applause. Only breathing. She opened her eyes. And for a heartbeat, looked toward the window, not at him, but at her reflection dissolving in rain. Nala placed the mic down gently. That soft click felt like a goodbye. Yari rose, his heart louder than the thunder. He wanted to speak, but she was already walking toward the door. When she reached it, she stopped for half a second, as if the city itself had called her name. She didn't turn, didn't wave, just stepped out, and vanished into the rain. The cafe remained still. Smoke drifted slowly upward. No one spoke for a long while. When Yari finally sat back down, his eyes were wet. Not from the rain that now seeped through the doorway, but from something older. He looked at the sketch. Her face incomplete. The last line unfinished. A waiter approached. "Do you know her?" he asked. Yari smiled faintly. "I used to. Now, I just hear her." By morning, Lomara streets gleamed. The storm had washed the city clean. But the echoes of her song lingered in every puddle. Down by the riverfront, someone painted lyrics on a wall. She sang before the rain. And the city finally cried. No one signed it. No one needed to. Yari passed by later. His coat damp. His eyes tired but softer. He paused, touched the paint, and whispered, "Still here." He turned and kept walking. That night, the cafe reopened. New faces, new laughter, new songs. But in one corner, a microphone stood untouched. A relic of something eternal. when the lights dimmed and smoke began to rise again, someone swore they heard her hum. Soft, distant, like a voice hiding between raindrops. Outside, the city shimmered, half asleep, half awake. And in its heartbeat, the rhythm of Nalás' song lived on. A promise, a ghost, a melody without end. At the back of the café stood a wall, covered with faces of the city's forgotten souls. Each face a story, each color a pain. Zola stopped there, staring at the dripping paint on her own hands. "Will I become a portrait too?" she whispered. Tay didn't answer. He just pulled a piece of charcoal from his pocket and began sketching her eyes. Those same eyes that once changed Kauana's skyline. And as the rain washed over the wall, those eyes began to fade away. It was past midnight. The power was out, but the neon reflections still danced across the puddles outside. Zola began her melody, the one she never finished before. There were no words, only breath and heartbeat. Tay lost himself in that sound. It felt as if time itself had stopped in the city. Weather, music, and love all lived in one shared moment. And when the song ended, only the rhythm of the rain remained. The first light of dawn glimmered through the raindrops. Kauana's streets looked clean, as if the night had washed away every sin. Zola stood by the door, her voice silent, but her eyes calm. Tay stood before her, holding a sketch. On it, he had written, "I didn't draw you, I found myself in you." Zola smiled softly and said, "And now, maybe after the rain, we'll find our colors again." Then they both walked away, toward the city's next song. The cafe was empty except for the echo of last night's song. Chairs stood crooked, glasses half filled, the piano lid left open, as if sound itself had forgotten to leave. Zola walked in barefoot, her steps soft on the wooden floor. She touched the microphone, cold, quiet. Outside, sunlight painted golden lines through the cracked windows. Tay entered silently, holding a cup of steaming coffee. For the first time, there was no regret in his eyes, only peace. The city was still waking, and Kauana smelled of rain and rebirth. The music hadn't ended, it had only changed shape. By evening, the city's heartbeat returned, buses, drums, laughter. Zola wandered toward the old bridge near the train tracks. Underneath it, street kids played rhythms with empty cans. Beats that sounded like broken prayers. She listened, then joined them, clapping in sync, her smile alive again. When Tay found her, she was teaching the kids to hum the melody of last night. A homeless man nearby whispered, "She's the woman whose song made the rain stop." Tay smiled quietly. For the first time, he didn't draw her, he just watched. That night, Kauana glowed differently. The street murals looked newer, colors sharper. And the same neon that once flickered weakly now burned brighter. Inside the cafe, people gathered again. Not to hear Zola sing, but to sing with her. No stage. No distance. Just one rhythm, one voice, one city healing itself through sound. Tay stood behind the bar, sketching the crowd. Each face a note, each movement a beat. Zola caught his eyes and nodded. The city was no longer silent. It had found its harmony again. Weeks later, the monsoon clouds returned. The cafe lights flickered, the same scent of smoke and jazz filled the air. Zola stepped to the mic one last time. Her hair shimmered gold in the blue light, her eyes looked beyond the crowd. Beyond Kawana. She sang softly. Not every ending is silence, some endings are songs that never stop. As she finished, thunder rolled above the city. Tay looked out through the window, the rain beginning again. He placed his last sketch on the table. Two reflections merging in one puddle. And when the downpour began, it felt like the sky was clapping for their story. The end, but the song lives on. Everything ended, yet the music remained alive. In the streets of Kawana, in the falling raindrops, and in the silent voice of a woman that had now become the very breath of the city.